Hi there, Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Good. Hanging in there, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. I just work has been especially crazy this week.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are adjusting to some weird work things. Hey, look, we got John back again, too.
Hey.
We'll have one or two others today, too. I think Robert said he was going to join. He may not be in your section. And I think Shelly is going to be joining as well. So we'll see. See who comes. Hey there, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just getting everyone in here and then we'll get started. So far it's you and Dave again, and Shelly is also coming in. Now you guys might be from, you guys are from two different sections, so you may not recognize everyone's name, but you're in the same class.
Okay.
Hi, Shelly, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, how are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good. I'm doing all right.
Good.
We'll see if anybody else comes in and then we'll get started in about 1 minute, okay?
Okay.
So just a reminder, these meetings can only be 40 minutes long. So in that announcement, I gave you guys two links. The first one is 5 to 5:40, and the second one is 5:45 to 6:25. Okay. So if we run out of time and we're still talking about stuff, then we'll go and do the second half. Okay.
All righty.
Put that reminder on here too. Hey, Robert was here at 4. I don't think he read the CST part of my message. I'm hoping he comes back at 5. Hopefully he saw that. If not, he'll see the recording, so that's okay too. So if you guys want to get together any questions or anything that you want me to work with, any files, you can email me any Adobe Illustrator files that you want me to look at or work with. You can certainly do that in the next minute or two. And any questions specific, have those in mind and we'll get started. All right, I'm gonna minimize that. All right, that's going. All right, so all three of you have already been with me in kind of an intro level kind of demo. So I can repeat anything that I've already gone through if it didn't make sense or if you're just having trouble with something. I can repeat any of that, or I can just dive into other stuff randomly, or if you have something specific, I can cover that. So
I'm confused about the layers because
okay.
I went to hit a layer. I had several, pictures on my six blocks that I had to put illustrations in,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit layer, and then it says, "Are you sure?" And I said yes, and it knocked off everything off my page. Luckily, the edit button brought it all back, but I want to know.
Okay.
Even though you don't push layer,
document.
it still layers them.
Let me do a document with layers so that you can see how it works, and then let's go into the details. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this is just a plain 8.5 by 11 artboard. Nothing fancy about it. I went ahead and I put this text on here. I'm going to leave it there just for a little bit longer in case someone joins us. Okay. But below that, I'm going to go ahead and do something similar to what you guys did on your activity. So first thing I'm going to do is just build myself a grid. I'm going to use the grid tool. Okay, now I don't need that many blocks in it, so I'm going to use my up and down arrow keys to adjust the number of blocks in my grid.
Oh.
Okay, and right now it has 0 stroke and it has 0 fill. It's still highlighted, or I can also highlight it with my direct selection tool. And I'm going to give it a color for that.
And that's the stroke?
That's for stroke. I'm going to increase the size of my stroke. And just so you know, you can have rounded corners on here if you want to. It's a little hard to see, but see how it kind of rounded the corner up here a little bit when I did that? Okay. So in this case, I don't really need that. I just wanted you guys to see it was an option.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you guys these 3 buttons because these can be really important sometimes. So right now, when I do a stroke, the actual path and the points are dead center on that stroke. Okay. I'm going to
What
make
do you
it.
mean by dead center? Tell me about.
You see how the path, this blue line, is in the middle of the purple stroke?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, if I click on this, it's asking to align stroke to the inside. So watch what happens to this path. Okay.
Oh.
So now the entire stroke is on the inside of the path.
Okay.
Okay. And if I click on this one, the entire stroke is now on the outside of the path.
Oh.
Whereas
Okay.
the default setting is kind of spaced evenly between in and out. Okay. It's just center.
Okay.
Okay. So sometimes there's a reason why you want the stroke on the inside or the outside of something. So just so you know, it's there. You can also make these dash lines, which can sometimes be useful. Sometimes. Oops, 126, I think so. Okay, so there's different options that you can do on this, okay? And this is just building a grid. That's all it is. It's nothing special about it, but I wanted you guys to see some of the other options that are here. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to a solid 6-point line. Okay, and since this is my grid and I'm pretty happy with it, I don't want to change it, but I also don't want to keep accidentally clicking on it, which is easy to do when you're doing other stuff. I'm going to go over to the layer that has this on it, and I'm going to lock it. Okay, now
Okay.
I can't access that at all. Nothing on this layer, which includes the text.
That's what I was talking about the other night. See how it has the little round circle with the light slash through it, the block.
Telling me I can't
That's what I
edit.
was doing.
Yeah, it's telling me I
Oh.
can't edit this layer because it's currently locked. If I unlock it, I can edit this layer. But if it's
Okay.
locked, I can't edit it. I can also turn it on and off for what is visually seen if you want to do that too. But right now it's blocked. Now I'm going to go ahead and label this grid because I like keeping everything really well labeled. It's easier for me to keep track of things. I have an old brain and it gets tired, so labels are helpful.
With you.
So, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, now in this case, it's called layer 2. I'm just going to call this symbols, for instance.
Okay.
Okay, now symbols is currently on top of grid. So if I come down here and I select my grid, okay, maybe not my text, but let's go ahead and give it a fill so I can show you something else that we can do here. Kind of clashes, but anyway, that's okay. Okay, let's lock that again. Now, if I do symbols right now, and I just draw a symbol, let's give it a solid color. Get rid of that because it's in my way. Okay, now this is the only object that is on this layer. I can turn the layer on and off. I can lock it so I can't do anything with it. I can also come over here and select everything on that layer, which in this case is only one object, but that's okay. Okay, and you'll notice that this layer is on top of this layer. That's why I can see the blue dot.
Okay.
But if I drag that underneath that layer, I can't see the blue dot anymore because this layer is on top.
Okay.
It's on bottom.
Unless you bring it to the forward, unless you bring it.
Okay. And you can add a single layer for each individual one if you want. Let's relabel this circle a minute. And let's label this one square. And let's come over here and let's add a square to my second circle. Okay. So once again, I can rearrange these if I want. Now, as long as both of these are on top of grid, it probably won't matter that much. But sometimes you'll have other objects on top of things and you do want to arrange them differently.
Okay.
Okay, now on this same layer, let's say I add a star as well. Okay, now we already know that it's on top of the grid layer because that's on the bottom. But it's also on top of the orange layer. And if I click right here, I can see the sub layers that are underneath the main layer.
Oh.
Okay, So this is a sublayer. So this is my orange rectangle. This is on top of my orange rectangle. It's the olive green, pea green star.
Uh-huh.
Both of these are within this layer, however. So I can control these as a single layer. I can lock them. So now I can't do anything on these at all. I can still edit this. Hang on just a sec. What's up, bunny? I will be on till at least 6 or 6:30. Okay. Go get yourself some dinner if you want. The joys of working at home. Alrighty. So does that clarify layers a little bit for you?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And
Do you want me to cover anything else?
I'll let the other people on to.
Okay, that's all right. We'll go through whatever you guys want. You know, whoever shows up to these meetings basically get to control the content. So, you know, you can also click and you can add additional artboards if you're trying to make, well, here's something that I was working on earlier. I think I showed both of y'all this the other day as well. Okay, so this is a card that I'm making for a client. So she has the front of the greeting card, the inside of the greeting card, and the back of the greeting card. So each of these are actually artboards. For printing purposes, I have to delete the other two artboards, but the content is here. But these are all separate artboards, basically. Okay, so if you have connecting materials such as these inside, outside, back, this is when I like using separate artboards. You can use them like doing the front and the back of a business card, for instance. You guys will be doing business cards most likely in one of the last couple of modules. Okay, you don't want to be doing it too early because it's not really good for an event. It's more for a business, but it's an option for you later on. Okay, so multiple artboards can be treated very similarly. Okay, you just make an extra artboard. You can click on it. Okay, you can also double click here and it'll take you to a kind of a close-up of it. All right, you can rearrange these as well, but there usually isn't a need for it. And if you ever need to adjust your artboard, like let's say this is going to be a flyer, but this secondary one is going to be a business card. Well, if that's the case, this is way too big. So I'm going to come down here with my artboard tool, which is this one. And I'm going to drag this in. I'm going to do a vertical. So that is about 3.5 by 2, depending on your printer. Or sorry, get in there, 3.5 by 2.25. Depends on your printer though, but you know, I'm kind of zoomed out a long way, but that's approximately the size of a business card. You'd have to get precise though if you're going to be going to a printer. So anytime you guys are printing anything, you need to go to the website of the printer first and find out what their bleed specs are. Bleed is the amount of design that will overhang the print area. So you don't want to put anything in the bleed area except for your background color and your background graphics, but you don't want anything important because it might get cut off. No text or anything like that. Okay, but we'll get more into that later in the term too. Okay, so you might wind up doing like a stationary system, in which case you'd have a business card. Okay, so I just added, let's call this B card instead. B card back. Okay, and then maybe you have an envelope and you do an entire identity system.
Okay. Stationary, that kind of thing to make it a
Yeah.
set.
Exactly. So again, you have to get your dimensions right.
Is there a infographic with all of the dimensions and stuff that I can?
There is, but it really does change a little bit by printer to printer. I'm working with VistaPrint right now for the client that's doing those greeting cards, and their numbers are different than some of the other printers.
Okay.
So again, like here, I'll go in here and show you guys this. Printers are sometimes a little picky. So when I went into here, I already did that one. All right, so let's just go to business cards here. So when you click on your business card, it'll give you an opportunity for your information somewhere. You got to find it on the page sometimes. So you can do vertical or horizontal here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can upload your design here, but this is where your specs and your templates are. So a lot of companies now have templates that you can download and use, or you can just find the dimensions depending on what it is that you're working in, and it'll give you all this information. So,
Gotcha.
okay, so you're working in vector images when you're in Illustrator, so those print really, really well. Raster images are better for web usage or photographs. Okay.
Okay.
CMYK is for print. RGB is for screens. Okay, resolution 300.
Oh.
300 is for print. 72 is for screens. So there's a lot of this information. This is where your safe margins and your trim and your bleed. You'll get into all that as well. But again, those are kind of advanced
Okay.
topics, so I don't want to spend too much time on those. But they're out there. You just have to find them on each individual printer site that you're using.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So John, Dave, what else can I show you guys?
I just had a question about the current assignment for this week with typography. Is our example, I was just wondering if maybe we could see an example of what the type of work is supposed to be presenting this week. And like, are our examples of typography just in the heading for each thing? And then
You're looking at the activity?
yes.
Okay, let me make sure I'm thinking of the same assignment. I got a few classes in my head, so I have to always make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay, got it. I remember this one. Yeah, so this still does have nothing to do with your client. This is still more practice with AI, basically. You do want to start thinking about fonts that you might want to use for your client and colors that might work well for your client, things like that, because you can start playing with them this week. Okay, so, and again, you're working with those elements and principles of design. Yeah, these are all the standard rubric issues. You'll be discussing how you're working with it. And if you look at these rubric tables, they start telling you what you need to be addressing. So this one is looking at moods.
Yeah.
Well, what is a mood of an image? A mood is a connotation. It's a style or a genre. So when I go online, let's just do a little experiment here. So if I say 1920s, Russian propaganda posters, there's a distinct look to these. It's a genre, it's a connotation, and anytime people use these types of colors together, these types of looks to their illustration, do you see a specific look or style on these?
Yeah.
And you guys have seen it before, right? You may not have known what it was called before, but this style, you recognize it, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, does that look a little familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, that's familiar.
All right, so you may not have known what it was called, but it has a specific style, a specific mood or connotation. And you have to think to yourself, well, okay, is this going to work well for an animal shelter? No, not at all. Okay, it's too aggressive and it's too hard. So maybe you're looking more for a whimsical feel for something. Gotta spell it correctly. There we go. Okay, so now whimsical, it has a style to it, okay? You guys seeing some of these? Some of these are more into it than others. Okay, a little whimsy.
Yeah.
Here, well, this one defines whimsy fairly well. Okay, you can also look at pop art. Okay, and in each one of these styles, there's a specific feel to it, from the text that is used, the color, the contrast. This is straight out of Andy Warhol's work. This kind of graphic, You see this kind of dot matrix that's in the back. This is a very 70s groovy style. I mean, there's feelings to these. There's emotions and moods that you can kind of pull out of these different styles. So when you guys are looking at writing, where'd it go? When you guys are writing up the moods that you're working with, think about, well, okay, what kind of typography or typeface would be appropriate for this client and why? Okay, so let's go back to Illustrator and let's look at, yeah, we can just use this for now. Okay, so this font here is called Arial Black. It's one that I use when I don't need to get fancy, but I need it to be very clear and very easy to read. Okay, it's a good solid font. There's nothing terribly interesting about it, but it's very, very functional. Good font. Okay, now let's go and let's look. Now I have a ton of fonts in here. You guys will not have quite as many as I have, but you probably have quite a few. And you can click on Find More. By the way, I got to this off of the character window, which is down on Type and Character. Okay, that's what this window is. So if I just click on my fonts here, this is the list of all the fonts that I have loaded. I have several hundred loaded here. If you don't find one in your preloaded fonts that you like, go to Find More. Okay, you can also filter according to style. Okay, do you want a classic sans serif font, or do you want the little feet on it, those little serifs? These are more traditional, more classic fonts. These are more contemporary and modern fonts. Then you have slab serif. Slab serif are kind of that medium ground. They have that nice clean edges. They're a consistent width from the top to the bottom of the letter, but they still have the serifs. So they're kind of a blend of modern versus traditional. Now, if I was designing for an animal shelter, the style of my graphics, the colors that I choose, and the typography that I go with all have to work as a unit. I don't want a really whimsical illustration and then very modern, sophisticated typeface. They kind of don't work together, right? If I'm working on the insurance company, I have to decide, well, do I want this to be a very traditional company in a small town? Because you guys kind of get to decide these types of things for these clients because they're artificial clients, obviously. Or is the insurance company a big modern corporation? It's going to change. The read of your logo that you create will change based on the type of font that you guys choose or the typeface that you're choosing. Okay. They do have script fonts, which can be really beautiful, but they're very hard to read. Not usually something you want to see in a logo. Ditto on the handwritten or handmade fonts. Some of these might work for the animal shelter if they're really, really clean, and I'll show you a couple of those. But for the most part, we avoid these for logos. They're mostly used for headings or like poster headings and things like that. Okay, black letter. Black letter is coming back in style from what I've read. I'm not a huge fan of it, but some people really think it's awesome. Personal choice. Okay, but these are all the different types of fonts that you can use. These are like the trendy decorative ones. I almost never use those. They're impossible to read half the time. Basically, when you create a logo, you want to be able to shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp and still be able to look at it in a glance and recognize exactly what it is and what the words are saying. You don't want ambiguity in a logo. Doesn't mean it has to be boring. Doesn't mean you can't be clever. There's some really interesting, clever, kind of mind-bending perceptual games that people will play with logos. But the graphics themselves are very, very simple. Sometimes it's the negative space that is actually creating the image within a logo. Do you guys know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, yeah.
Dave, Don, does that ring a bell?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So negative space can sometimes be just as important as a positive space in the logo. So you really want to be able to look at the background and make sure that it is or isn't saying what you want it to say. I sent out an announcement on bad logos last week. Now, most of those are bad because of their positive space, because of the graphical elements that are being used. But I believe there is one where the image that they put on the page wasn't bad, but the design that it made in the background from just the background image had a shape that was not desirable. So you have to be careful. You got to look really carefully at these types of things. Okay, back to type. Sorry, I got sidetracked. You got thin, medium, and thick. Tall, condensed, extended. Okay, you got the low X height, which is those crossbars on the H's, on the T's, things like that. Contrast or thick and thin contrast. You have these low contrast. Now these are generally slab serif or the serif. Okay, when you start getting into these regular contrast or these high contrast, these are going to be falling under your serif fonts for the most part. Okay. You also have a choice of anytime you pick any font, you can choose, let's just stick with that, to go small cap, all cap, or up just regular upper lowercase. Okay, so this is using small caps. So you have the regular caps, but then all these letters look like these letters, but they're smaller versions of it. Or if I turn this off, now I have regular upper lowercase font. Okay, so there's 3 different versions, all upper, small cap, or regular. Okay, so each one of these will also say something different about the client. Okay, when we see these really simple fonts, such as Arial Black, oh, somebody's joining us. Hang on just a sec. Hi there, Robert. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi there. Okay, we're kind of working on fonts right now. We're kind of examining those. After I finish this section, I'll come back to you and see if you have any questions, okay?
Okay. I'll follow
Awesome.
along.
Alrighty. So, so this is another really simple, elegant font. It's very clean. It's very contemporary. Whereas something, well, I mean, this is an example of a font I wouldn't suggest people use for a logo. It's too hard to read. Still nice and clean and modern, but it's too hard to read. This one is kind of an interesting font, but it kind of has this high-tech kind of sci-fi look to it. Unless you really want that look. And when you're doing a logo, these logos last 10, 20 years, so you want to be careful about trends. But unless you really want that sci-fi high-tech look, this would not be the great font for any logo. Okay. Some others you can look at. Like I said, I have hundreds in here. And you kind of get a feel for them after a while. And you get some that you really like. I use Futura for a lot of things. It's one of my favorites. It's got the medium, it's got the bold, it's got a lot of different options. So I really like Futura a lot. I tend to use it quite often. One of the most boring fonts on the planet, but one that we all see constantly, is Times New Roman. Oh, look, I don't even have it anymore. I've used it so little. Oh, good. Okay, so but Times New Roman, you guys all know that one. It's the one that half the textbooks in the world are printed with. Okay.
The ones we have to do all of our papers with.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I don't know why they make you guys do that one. It's the most boring font on the planet, but whatever. This is another nice one, Optima. You see it has a thick-thin differentiation on the letters. So it's a little thicker on the sides, a little thinner at the top. It's got this nice little, it's not really truly a serif. It's not a foot that extends, but it's got a little detail. So sometimes something simple like that can lend an elegance to something.
Which one is that one, Optima?
That's Optima, yeah. And like I said, there's hundreds and hundreds in here. I clicked sans serif, that's why. I'm like, why am I not finding any of my others? That's why Times New Roman didn't show up. It'll be in here now, sadly. There it is. Okay. Everybody knows Times New Roman. Boring, boring, boring.
Yeah.
I will also say that you want to avoid Myriad Pro because that's the Apple default as well. Clear all. Myriad Pro is the default for Apple, so it's the font that you will see. There it is when you first start using Apple or Adobe Illustrator. So avoid that one.
What about Georgia? The Georgia, I know,
nice
that's my
font.
favorite.
Yeah, Georgia's a nice looking font. It's a little more traditional and it's very elegant. It's very readable. It's in here somewhere. Yeah, you are. Okay, it's a very nice, clean font. Like I said, it is more traditional, so you want to make sure that that's an appropriate fit for your client. Now, if you want a serif font, but you want something that maybe is a little different, you might try Big Caslon, which is a little bit different looking. It's a little quirky. I kind of like it. Some other good ones. Yeah, now you're getting into some of the really quirky ones. Yeah.
For an animal shelter, you want a more friendly and quirky one, I believe, because you definitely want
Yeah.
to.
I mean, I would
I
avoid
love-
anything in script, but there are some good ones in here. See, this is just too trendy. It has a specific 50s look to it. You might
Yeah,
get
that's
50s
too
car look.
weird.
Yeah, it's a 50s car look is what I define it as. But there are some, I could maybe see this one working for the word all pause, but then
Yeah.
animal shelter, I would put in a very, very crisp, clean, modern font. So you can also.
So you can interact.
Absolutely, you can. Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's usually a good idea to have two fonts when you have something like, what is it, Arlington Regional Hospital? So Arlington Regional might be quite large and in a very, oops. Yeah. There you go. There you are. Blind. Okay, so if I were to take Arlington Regional, I might do that. I might do it in all caps, but then over underneath that, I might say hospital, and I would probably put that in, and here's something else I would do. Space this out. When you space out a font, it reads as more elegant. And when you have a font that's condensed, it reads as more economical. Okay, so if something like all pause, you don't really want necessarily a really elegant look to it. You don't want people to think sophisticated money on an animal shelter.
Yeah.
But you might want that for something like a hospital. You want it to read very, very clean. You want it to read really elegant.
Right.
You can also thicken these up with a stroke. Be very careful about how much stroke you add because it can muddy it up like crazy. You also generally will want to avoid a different colored stroke than the inside of the font. Okay, like a red on a black or something like that. It just doesn't look that great.
Right.
Okay, it looks tacky and it looks messy, and
Yeah.
even with more appropriate colors, it just doesn't look good. Okay, so avoid that look if you can. Go back to that. I make this a little heavier. Look at that, it does. Yay. This one, I'm going to go back to medium, I think. Yeah, maybe even light. Nope, not an option. Yeah, medium it'll be. Maybe I would even stack this actually. Anytime you can make a logo more square than long or tall, the better off you'll be. Here we go. This is looking better. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to line all these up. And I'm going to list, or I'm going to create these as separate entities. The reason is because I want to do a separate look for each line of text. So I'm going to line them all up over here. Pull that one down a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. Now this one, I'm going to go ahead and spread it out so that it is equal to Arlington on the top. You can turn on your grid to make this a little easier. Okay. Now this one, we're getting close. Actually, I'll still adjust it that way. Okay, but this is the beginning of a logo. It's just the text. Now with this, I can create an object up here. I can put the whole thing in a box. I can just box the text, or I can just box the logo. Let me show you guys a couple of options. These work okay. Oh, actually, hang on. You know what? I'm going to do some shameless promotion here, but I want to show you guys a variety of stuff. So forgive me for that. But I have a bunch on my website, so I'm going to show you guys that. And that way it's just going to be easier. So with this logo has a box around the whole thing, and it has another box around Cedros. Okay, boxing different elements of your logo is a really good way to, one, make it square, and two, make it stand out. Okay, so this is an easy way of doing that. And I use it often enough when you want something. Oops, what did I just do? This is a whole different feel to it. This is a kid's store. Now this is one of the few times I've used a hand-drawn look to both the logo and the font, but I balanced it out with a cleaner font at the bottom. And you understand the whimsy that this might inspire, and you want to keep that sophisticated with the font and the use of the French.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, this is another box one. Slow. So again, simple graphics.
Oh yeah, that's positive. I mean, you're negative.
Exactly, but it's really, really simple. Super simple. I think this is the Optima font that I was showing you guys a few minutes
That
ago.
is.
But again, we got these different elements, these lines kind of tie everything together. It's a nice, clean, square logo. If you can get a square or a circular logo, they tend to do better than really tall or really long logos. So anytime you can work it into a square or something close to a square, you're better off. Like most of these have a pretty simple, like this is an exception. And this is definitely an exception. I still didn't like this one too much. They loved it. Fair enough. Okay, this is another kids one with a hand-drawn look. Kids logos, you can get away with it. The reason I always show a monochrome version next to the full color version is because every logo should be designed in pure black on the white background, so that you know that if you have to go monochrome, whether it be a single color or just black and white, that it still survives. So you got to be really careful when you have color next to color. It gets really tricky to try and make a monochrome logo if you're not careful. I know I struggled with this one a lot because I had these colors next to each other. This was a struggle for me. Here's another one where, oops, I didn't have to do that. Okay, simple, clean. It's got a little bit of style to the font, but it's pretty easy to read. Two different fonts are used here. Lafrite was the name of the restaurant. Express was like a delivery service within that restaurant. So I wanted to inspire the, the speed, which is why I have the tilt on this font. It's more economical, so I used a really simple sans serif modern font. Okay, the color